Hey guys, today we're sitting down with one of the modern greats of our time, Chris Buck, a British guitar player who has been praised by Slash. You've heard of him, right? Chris is a really humble and thoughtful guy. I can't wait for you guys to hear what he has to say about guitar. I caught Chris's show in Nashville last night. He's over here with his band Cardinal Black, and they're debuting in the United States for the first time. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about guitar playing. We'll play a lot of guitar. It was truly a pleasure. So without further ado, Chris Buck. Dude, honored to have you in here.
Pleasure to be here.
We've known each other, we met each other one time and then I've just followed you. And the first thing I notice about your guitar playing, whether it's an Instagram video of you up close and personal or on stage, do you know this about yourself? You kind of dance a little bit, or you maneuver and it's a very acrobatic display, but it's also very subtle.
It's heavy-handedness. It's me hitting the guitar far harder than is needed to be hit, to be honest. But again, it's one thing to know that, and it's another thing entirely to actually be able to do anything about it, or to want to do anything about it, to be honest. The physicality and the enjoyment of getting into it, and whether it's a movement thing, whether it's a kind of aggression thing of hitting the guitar pretty hard.
Abrasive attack, but with the fingers. Can you talk about switching between pick and fingers and when, you know, if you had to break it down? I know a lot of it's just second nature.
That's the thing,
but
trying to reverse engineer this without, you know, kind of like giving, I don't know, artifice to it and just trying to manufacture reasons as to why you do it, which aren't necessarily true, you know. But it's again, it's a tactile thing. It's a connection to the guitar. I guess I feel innately more connected to the guitar when I play with my fingers than I do with a plectrum. And that's not to denigrate playing with a pick. I play with a pick a lot. But it's just a connection thing. It's a feeling kind of one less step removed than when you're playing with a piece of plastic, I guess. It's a dynamic thing as well. I feel so much more in control of the guitar dynamically when I play with my fingers. Then the tips of your fingers are so soft and fleshy that you get that kind of vocal kind of... If you want to dig in with your nail. Just having that kind of variation, I guess, going back and forth between those two is just such a huge part of my playing at this point.
So a pick, I'm just thinking back, because I've asked a lot of people this question and everyone has a little bit different answer, which is, I can't explain it, but then you start to explain it. And what I've noticed is this pick is pretty much always the same sound and the same, you know, you can dig in or you can play soft, but you're going to hear the pick when you use a pick.
It has its own sound.
With fingers, I've noticed, just right there with your playing, there's sort of like 3 different finger picks. You know what I mean? There's the very gentle, like with your thumb and like the rounder, soft part. And then you have this kind of raking. And you can make it pointy.
Yeah. I do that a lot, that rake kind of, you know, that. whatever I'm actually doing there. Again, I never know.
Slurred rake.
Yeah.
If you wanted to tab it out.
Yeah, absolutely.
But
plenty slurry about me today as well.
yeah, you know, it was a late night last night.
Yeah.
You almost know as the listener when it's like, all right, I think that this pick might be coming out soon. And this is just as a guitar nerd listening, because I know when you build your solos, it's really one of my favorite things about your music is it's fun to watch you develop your guitar solos, and it seems to start with the fingers and those various picks and ends with this pick. Can you talk about what goes into writing a Cardinal Black solo? Or if it's always just kind of off the cuff and then you adopt something. How's it go?
There's a bit of variation, I guess. There's a couple of solos in the set, which tend to be pretty much the same every night, just because I think that's what people want to hear. Tell Me How It Feels is a good example of that. I guess it was the first track that we released. Track got a little bit of attention, the solo got a little bit of attention. So I think that's one of those examples of, if I don't play that solo as per the record every night, people are probably kind of want their money back.
Yeah, dude.
I enjoy that sensation of feeling as though you're perilously close to the wheels falling off. There's certain nights maybe when you're not feeling it, or just things aren't necessarily going your way in the way that you would want. You kind of do not necessarily kind of try to colour outside the lines and just stick to what you know and get the job done, be efficient, and just kind of, you know, make sure that you don't kind of the wheels don't fall off totally. But you know, nights like last night was a good example. You know, it was such a fun show. The crowd were, you know, just kind of behind us from the get-go, and it gives you a confidence in spontaneity and then kind of going for stuff that maybe necessarily wouldn't ordinarily trying to build a little bit of a narrative. It's hard to talk about this stuff without sounding very kind of, you know, pseudo-intellectual.
We're among nerds. It's cool,
just,
dude.
I don't know, I'm always conscious of sounding really pretentious, but it's trying to take people on a journey. It's trying to tell a little bit of a story or build a narrative. And for me, and I undoubtedly overuse this, I'm always at pains to say that, but one way I do that, generally speaking, is start low, aim high, because it gives you somewhere to go. It gives you a little bit of a kind of a narrative to build, as opposed to being, if you come in all guns blazing on your 21st fret, you kind of hit the ceiling. Guy that I kind of really latched onto was Slash. Just I think they were guitar influences prior to that. You know, growing up, it was very much influenced by my father's record collection, which was the Beatles, it was the Stones, it was Bob Dylan, it was kind of T-Rex, a lot of that kind of stuff, which I guess inevitably of a child of the 1950s, your music taste was almost dictated for you to a degree. So he turned me on to Stevie Ray and Clapton. Rory Gallagher was a big one as well. You know, I don't think Rory gets anywhere near the credit that he's due. You know, such a great player. But yeah, they were the kind of first guys that I really kind of latched onto. But I guess there's a lot to be said for finding people yourself. You know, being influenced by your parents is one thing. Finding music of your own volition or of your own discovery through music. You know, I mean, being 14, 15 and being an aspiring guitar player, such an exciting point in your life, probably the most exciting point in your life.
It's the best.
Because all of this music is new. It's Zeppelin, it's Thin Lizzy, it's Van Halen, all of these incredible bands and musicians and artists and guitar players that you're discovering almost in the same week sometimes. You know, I remember a kind of a moment of going out with my parents when I was a kid and buying a load of CDs, because CDs were still a thing then, and coming home with almost a record collection. I think my parents bought me like 10 CDs. amongst which was like the best of Van Halen, Thin Lizzy, it was Guns N' Roses, it was all of these.
Pretty good haul there.
Absolutely, yeah. And just going home and just kind of like voraciously devouring that, and for whatever reason, just really Guns N' Roses just spoke to me. And I think Slash was undoubtedly a huge part of that. But the songs, Axl, everything about that band just kind of connected with me. And I spent the longest time trying to emulate Slash, trying to be Slash, trying to embody, I am Slash. There was definitely a period of that. So Slash was a huge influence on me. Stevie Ray, Clapton, undoubtedly Rory Gallagher, as I said. The usual suspects, I guess, to a degree, But more recently, I guess, as I got older, it's generally been more like vocal led or more kind of band led or more song led, I guess. So I'm a big soul fan, so whether it's Otis Redding or Sam Cooke, all the guys that I continually reference in interviews, just as great vocalists, not only with a great voice, but effortless phrasing and a fluidity and a smoothness and kind of beauty in the delivery, which is just something I try and kind of incorporate into the guitar in some small way. Whether or not I achieve any of that is a very different matter, but I'll try. So.
I think you're achieving things.
Yeah.
I want to talk about the ways in which you achieve those things, which to me, there's a lot of cool elements of your guitar playing, but what sticks out to me is your intonation.
Oh, okay, cool.
That is the vocal sound on a guitar, and how you can get into those notes is what dictates your phrasing and your voice on the guitar. Where did these micro bends, half bends? It really relies a lot on your sustain as well. So it's like a whole sound gear thing as well. At the end of the day, you really rely on a lot of these, almost like one attack, but three different bends in one.
Genesis of that for me is listening to vocalists and trying to copy melodies, and not just copy melodies in the sense of how you would write it out to sheet music, but actually listening to, well, how do they get from that note to that note? Was it a kind of, was it a slide? Was it a vocal slide, or was it a slur, or was it a hard stop and then a new note in on the note? Did they slide into that note? Did they pitch down to that note? All of these little idiosyncrasies, like I said, Sam Cooke was a huge influence on me. So listening to him and really deconstructing how he approached things and trying to play that on guitar in some way, and consequently you get a lot of these kind of, like you said, whatever you want to call them, That's one of the beauties of guitars. It is the kind of, or the unique thing about the guitar, I guess, is the ability to bend strings and kind of pitch to notes in different ways. But a huge part of that undoubtedly is being familiar with your guitar as well. Obviously, this guitar, you can see from the way that I play it a lot. So I'm very familiar with it. I'm very well versed in how far I need to bend to get certain notes, and consequently it's kind of, it does aid all of that stuff. If you pick up a guitar with a totally alien scale length or a different set of strings maybe, or kind of lighter gauge strings or heavier gauge strings, it's going to take a sec to kind of orientate yourself and kind of know how far you have to kind of bend to get certain notes. So a huge part of that undoubtedly is just a familiarity with not only the instrument, but your instrument specifically. So
what would people practice to become as good at bending as you are?
Oh man. I guess, the kind of way that I went around it was trying to listen to vocal melodies and trying to play vocal melodies. And not just, the example that I use continuously, we kind of spoke about Guns N' Roses earlier, but if you take the melody of something like Sweet Child of Mine, if you look at that on paper, obviously that's not how it's sung. That is the melody of the verse, but it's in reality. Those little subtle kind of, whatever, we're going to get copyright struck if we're not careful. Just trying to listen to the melody and, try and kind of actually emulate the phrasing and emulate the idiosyncrasies in the way that it's sung, and it doesn't have to be Guns N' Roses. It doesn't have to be anything in particular, it's just listening to music you like, listening to singers you like in particular, and how do they approach that? What are they doing? How are they getting that unique sound, because phrasing is such an identifiable, unique part of any musician's kind of repertoire, whether it's, I don't know, Frank Sinatra or whether it's Steve Vai.
Yeah.
You know, their phrasing is unique because it's them. It's just, you know, and it's one of the things that separates good musicians from great musicians, I guess, is good phrasing or great phrasing.
Let's talk about some of these things you're stepping on. What's
Talent enhancers.
Talent boosters, I say.
What I found is that if I just keep buying pedals, I don't need to practice because it just distracts you from...
That is how it works, right?
From the flaws in your playing.
I thought.
Why bother putting in effort when you can just spend more money?
What's the most important pedal on your board? We won't go all the way into the nerdy stuff, but because I know you went on that pedal show and did a whole situation with them. But what's like...
happily talk about the nerdy stuff all day long.
Yeah.
It's a running joke that the band call the board 50 Shades of Gain.
50 Shades of Gain. That's pretty good.
There's a lot of overdrive, and it's you know, part of that is just flexibility from venue to venue or from night to night, whatever you're feeling, whatever works in the moment. There are certain combinations of pedals or certain pedals which, you know, inevitably get used more than others. But it's just, I don't know, every time I go down this kind of spiel, I feel like I'm justifying myself. I enjoy pedals. I like pedal boards. I like faffing around with pedal boards. I introduced some Americans to the concept of faffing yesterday.
Faffing?
Faffing is just messing around with things. And kind
faffing around, okay.
Faffing around, yeah.
I like that. I'm going to use that.
See, my visit wasn't a total loss.
Faff off.
Yeah. I just enjoy it. It's just a fun thing to do, you know. I built the pedal board, or not the pedal board itself, but I put the pedal board together, sticking a Netflix series on and just faffing around with the pedal boards.
I mean, that's part of the joy, right?
Absolutely. It's one of life's
simple pleasures.
Simple pleasures, absolutely. Expensive, simple pleasures. So,
right.
Yeah, I'm a big pedal fan, but there's undoubtedly some redundancy on here, and there's some stuff which I get away with. I mean, for years, I was a Les Paul into a Marshall, and anything else was witchcraft as far as I was concerned. Maybe a wah pedal, but, you know, kind of didn't really need anything else. So if you confronted me with just a gainy amp and said do a show, I would be more than happy, you know. A little bit more kind of ambient, I guess.
Yeah.
It's one of the cool things about being a kind of one guitar band is even with the keyboards, there's still quite a lot of space for kind of like some weirder stuff and building some pads and building some kind of like more cool ambient stuff in the background, you know. And that's a lot of the kind of crazier, like I've got a huge reverb on the Golden Reverberator from UA Audio, which is, so like.
That's going forever.
That'll go for days. I forget what it is, actually. It's one of the presets. It's a Hall, apparently. But, so there's some kind of bigger, crazier stuff like that. There's a long, kind of brighter reverb as well, which is that's a plate. That's for a song called Jump In. There's a load of delays. There's the US Starlight has this effect on it, which is specific to a song off our next record, which we haven't started playing live yet, but I really like.
It's like a shimmer echo.
It's like a weird kind of bouncing octave delay. It's a little bit Chase Bliss-esque, I guess.
Yeah.
You know, I've never really kind of dug into the Chase Bliss stuff. I would love to, but it's, yeah, kind of...
Is that one on a tap tempo, or is it more about the randomness?
No, it's, well, kind of. It's a little bit beautifully random, but it is actually specifically set to the tempo of that track, which is why it's a preset on there, because then that's a movable. So whenever we've rehearsed that thus far, it's nice to know that, well, at least you're starting the song at the right tempo. It might not end at the right tempo, but it starts at the right tempo, which is half the battle. So loads of delays. I've got my signature overdrive as well. 2-pedal from Thorpe Effects in the UK, the Electric Lightning. That's pretty visceral, aggressive as overdrive goes. It's kind of quite martially.
That pedal rules.
It's cool. That's kind of, there's a lot of the set actually is with that. I guess the past couple of years, I've kind of, my overdrive choices have changed a little bit, and I've kind of started to go towards more aggressive, more kind of bitey sounding overdrive pedals, I guess, for want of a better phrase. For years, it was looking for the overdrive that kind of rounded the most edges off and took away any kind of weird little quirks or idiosyncrasies in your playing, whereas I'm kind of embracing that a little bit more now. It's same with the Airlane Drive from Mythos. If you kick that in, you get kind of quite a... Then the other side. The HX Stomp covers a lot of ground as well. This just, kind of, I don't know, a good example of that is like this chorus that I use for one song.
I was going to say, is that mainly for modulation? Or
yeah, modulation and kind of some reverbs and delays and stuff like that. Something I get quite a lot of use out of, actually, which has surprised me because I didn't think I would, is it's called the poly sustain on there. It's essentially the electro-harmonics freeze. So kind of like that sort of...
That's great.
It's
I feel like I'm in that Austin City Limits Eric Johnson situation where he starts with the drone in G.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's nice for, like, I don't know, kind of broken down verses and songs. So it's all about just, giving me a little bit of flexibility. There's some crazier stuff then. There's the fuzz for...
Yeah, let's see some crazy.
The Tell Me How It Feels solo, which is the fuzz, and the Mythos Mjolnir strapped together. Pretty much that sound in the set. That's all that kind of get used for. There's one or two other little moments, but yeah, it's just, this is one of my favourite pedals, I guess, the past couple of years as well, the Boss RE202, primarily because it does something which annoys the rest of the band, which is amazing. Perfect. So it's the first track of the set is a combination of that, which is a multi-head kind of delay thing. You combine that with the echo rate, you get some really crazy stuff. Does this kind of like hold thing. As well as which
game changer.
The downside of this is that it is very close to the weight limit of what you're allowed to fly with, which is 32 kilograms. So you have to kind of, You might have to put like one of your pedals in your pocket. Yeah, pretty much. Last year we did 2 festivals back to back on the same weekend, one in Switzerland and then one in the UK. So it was obviously a quick turnaround, lots of flying involved, lots of travel. I had a sickness bug for the duration as well, so I was horrendously ill. So basically didn't eat or drink for about 48 hours, maybe even slightly longer than that. So couple that with the gear kind of calamity that followed, it was just a terrible weekend. User error entirely. I didn't protect my board well enough, was the long and short of it. I had a Pelly case, which I bought to carry the pedal board around, because I was convinced that it was going to be lighter than the actual flight case. Turns out it wasn't. And I think the flight case probably offers better protection because it is custom made for the board. Yeah. This would fit in the Pelly case, but with lots of like homemade foam and kind of like covering it in things and stuff. And, if a baggage handler wants to damage it, they'll probably find a way to damage it. So I think there's only a certain amount of stuff that you can kind of try and protect your stuff from. But it was in its pedal case, and it must have taken quite a substantiative bang, because we did the festival in Switzerland without any dramas. When we got back to the UK, set up, sound check, fine, all working as, you know, kind of perfectly as planned. It gets to the kind of like solo section of the first track, and this kind of like a held section using that RE202, that kind of like pad. It's a point where I'm holding down a pedal and I'm trying to kind of like lean. I do it every night, try and press a couple of different things while I'm holding it, which just basically stops me kind of tap dancing too much. I press one on the G3, on the Gig Rig G3, which is basically the switcher that controls everything else. Press a button, nothing. Press a button again, nothing. Press it again, it engages. I'm like, okay, this is stressing me out now, something's not right.
Yeah.
Right, I'll turn it off. See if I can turn it off. Press it, doesn't turn off. I'm like, okay, what's happening? Something's gone wrong. In my panic, I realise that the foot switch is
You're trying to fix it before that first note comes.
Yeah, absolutely.
No, I'm not missing that first note.
Absolutely, before the solo starts. So I'm kind of like, you know, kind of faffing around. Trying to fix it. Stupidly, in my kind of like blind panic, I'm still holding the foot switch, which was faulty. Unplugged the board, plugged it back in. And what happens when you plug the board back in, holding that specific foot switch, is it enters into some kind of like strange boot mode.
Factory reset or some sort of thing.
Honestly, I can't quite piece together what happened, but the long and the short of it was that nothing worked as it should. And then my delay, which is an Echo Sex, a Guru's Echo Sex, which does this, the basic longer delay. As a consequence of booting up in some weird mode, that basically went into kind of like a feedback loop. Which was the loudest thing. When I turned that on for the solo there, that was the loudest thing I've ever heard in my life. It sounded like a freight train running across the stage. Scared the life out of the rest of the band, because it's just deafeningly loud. And everyone's in-ear monitors as well. Quickly turned that off, but of course you're left with because I've got like spillover, you're left with that decaying. It was just calamitous. The moment felt terrible, felt like, oh, well, the gig's ruined. None of these people will ever want to see us again. So I watched the footage back because I was hoping that, or maybe it wasn't that bad. It was that bad. It was worse, if anything. So you live and learn. I don't know what you learn apart from just
you learn how loud of a sound you can make.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
It's important information.
What I learned in that day was my amps have far more headroom than I ever realised. I didn't think it was possible for them to be that loud. If you're going to do it in front of 10,000 people at a festival. You know?
Oh yeah, so that's only when it happens. Actually.
Oh, absolutely, yeah, exclusively. So apart from that, there's been a couple of I unplugged my cable from my wah pedal last night. You know, just funny little moments like that. But yeah, for the most part, touch wood, it's all been amazingly so. Given I put it together, it's all been relatively bulletproof. So we're playing the Troubadour Los Angeles next, so it's guaranteed to go wrong there. So you've jinxed me now.
No way, man. Anti-jinx if it's being filmed.
Yeah.
The worst is when you're playing, and then the solo comes, and you got nothing. That's the worst walk around stage panic that you can have. But
you lose the ability to think logically at that point.
If some people haven't experienced that, it's really a rite of passage. You learn a lot about yourself.
Oh man, yeah.
You learn about the depths of
despair
and all the things, and then if you could save it, it's a really formative experience. But
one of the guitars I had with me on that run was actually a kind of related to the new guitar that I played last night that you referenced, the Springer Firehawk. Mikael Springer, the guy who built that, was kind enough to loan me a guitar. He came to Luxembourg to see us, loaned me this guitar, said, look, if you kind of take it out, see if you like it, see if you connect with it. I did like it. What that guitar had, which was unusual, it's essentially Firebird, and it had a switch to kind of like flick over between Firebird 3 and Firebird 5 wiring maybe, but what that meant was that unless you had what would ordinarily be the bridge tone rolled up at all times, which was essentially a volume control for the middle pickup, if you knock the switch, just cut the output of the guitar. And I must have done that on, I don't know, maybe we did 12 shows, probably half of those shows I would do that. I would just knock it, cut the output of the guitar, and every night without fail would forget that there was this button that would do that, and would start like mentally going through this checklist of like, well, the board's powered, like I'm plugged in, everything seems to be connected. Oh, button, you know, kind of like, and every night, or pretty much every night, was a case of like, oh yeah, it's the button. Yeah, at the end of the tour, we had what's referred to as a kangaroo court in Berlin, which is basically everyone in the band or in the kind of the band setup drinking for their sins, or their misdemeanors or their cock-ups throughout the space of the run. And needless to say, I had quite a heavy night as a consequence of that guitar.
That's a good tradition. I like that.
Oh, absolutely.
Any missed cues or pedal malfunctions?
You're late to the lobby. If you
late to the lobby, that's a good one.
If you drop a stick, if you're late to the van, if you try and put the wrong fuel in the van, etc., etc. If the van is vastly overweight and you get fined, you try and apportion blame. So yeah, it was an interesting run.
Yeah, man. This is your first run over in the USA.
Yeah, it is actually.
Should mention.
Prohibitively expensive, to get.
Yeah, you were telling me before we turned on the cameras about the cost for work visas to perform in the United States.
It's a costly
which
process.
is something I haven't had experience with.
So I mean, it is expensive. It's I mean, for the 6 of us to come across officially with work visas, it's been about the better part of about $20,000, and the visa only lasts then for the duration of your trip as well, which is frustrating, as it used to be a year. So you could, if you were clever, you could essentially get 2 tours in under 1 visa. So I mean, it seems a little disingenuous to call what we're doing at present a tour. It's 3 dates in essence, quite sporadically around the US. We're still a relatively new band. We launched in 2021 in the middle of COVID, in the middle of lockdown, really.
Right.
We were trying to judge it as to kind of like how long realistically we would be a band before we'd be able to actually go out and do some shows.
Yeah.
So we launched in May of 2021, and it felt like everything was on the cusp of opening up again. And then I think it was actually in, I don't know, maybe December or thereabouts before we could actually do our first show. It was quite a while. But relatively speaking, we're still a new band, and things seem to have gone pretty well pretty quickly. Our first headline London show was in 2022. It's about 150 people in a room above a pub. And our next London show is at Shepherd's Bush Empire, which is 2,000 people. So it's kind of
awesome,
like
dude.
It's moving relatively quickly, which is cool within the kind of context of the music industry, which is a slog at the best of times. Definitely something that we will continue, even if it doesn't necessarily make total financial sense for the foreseeable. We'll still keep doing it because it's a blast, if nothing else. And the crowds are so responsive; they seem to have really embraced us as well. So yeah, we're very fortunate. So. It's cool.
It was, dude, there were people in there singing along to your guitar solo. Not even just the lyrics, but your guitar solo. So I think you're doing something right. It's really, really dedicated fan base you've built.
Just the amount of people that travel. I guess it's as a consequence of only doing 3 sporadic shows, but just speaking to people in the line outside initially, there were people traveled. I think someone commented saying the kind of like immediate people around him in the crowd that he got speaking to, there were people from 7 different states.
Oh yeah.
So it's like wild. That it just blows my mind that people travel so far and wide, to come and see us. People flying from East Coast, people flying from all over the place. So
yeah,
it's cool. It's it turns out it's quite a big country.
It's huge.
We've driven over quite a lot of it over the past couple of days, and it's I knew it was big, but it's very big. So.
When you come through Nashville, if you guys are down, need to take a break from the Airbnb life. I have an Airbnb. I just have a Great Dane. He's sort of like a butler, though, so you can use that if you need.
Oh, go and meet him.